Big explosion. I always forget that happens.
Hello,
Hi,
hello,
hey,
everybody.
hello. Welcome to another edition of Threat Thursday Live. We're going to be talking about some fun little data exfiltration methodology today. I give it a second or two, and we can get rolling. Cool, good enough. So today we are going to talk through one of the threats we have built for you guys on the Scythe platform, and we're talking data exfiltration here. So this one's kind of interesting because of the way it's doing it. Everybody's seen Rclone before. It's popped up in CTI a bunch. The way it's used, it's tended people like to use it to exfiltrate places out to like Mega or other like self-hosted sites or things like that. But we're doing it a little different. We are bringing one in through the platform in the threat and actually doing some data exfiltration out to AWS to some S3 buckets. So we wanted to walk you guys through that, let you kind of see what it's doing, and encourage you guys to use it because it is a pretty cool build out the way we have it, and we've used it a couple times already in engagements to great success. So let's show them what we're talking about here, Tyler.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say too before we go and show the threat. The reason why we switched it to an S3 bucket, contrary to like going out to Mega or some other kind of hosting site, is because AWS is allowed through pretty much everywhere, every network, because you have something that runs on AWS. You have some EC2 instance or S3 bucket that you need to be able to interact with or something. So it's not really like as a C2 or as an exfiltration site or mechanism. It pretty much is allowed everywhere, which is great for us, right?
Yeah, and with the way this thread is set up, it's not unrealistic for you to be able to come in and modify it to send the data to whatever your storage spot of choice is, whether that's another website or some other kind of bucket. It doesn't have to be AWS. That's just how we're using it.
Yeah, for sure. So before we go into the thread, I just wanted to point out that it does require some variables on your end and some pre-configuration on your end. So you can't exfil to an S3 bucket without having an S3 bucket, right? So you need to make sure that you have an S3 bucket created that you're able to reach from wherever it is you're trying to reach to. So it needs to have the appropriate permissions to allow for the correct users and ACLs, anything like that you need to have set up. So you can have it be a public bucket, or you could just have it opened to interact with the IP scheme of the environment you're trying to exfil from. So you can see we have our bucket name variable in here, as well as some access key IDs and some secret key access in here. So we have kind of a dummy exfil user that we created for this demo. So you need to create the S3 bucket and then create the user, apply the permissions so that user can access the S3 bucket and post data up to it, and then you would just set those variables in your campaign before you launch it. But with that being said, let's get into how the campaign looks and what it's actually doing in here. Let me scroll to the bottom, and then yeah, I'll leave our layout like that. You can still see it pretty good. So up first, it just says some enumeration. This isn't really a part of the exfiltration piece. This is just so the threat can, or the campaign, the threat can understand where these locations are on your system, on your endpoint. It uses these variables later on to create directories and things like that. So that's what it's doing here initially. It'll use that information or that data to, again, set those variables future on. So that way you don't have to modify it for each campaign. It'll just dynamically pull those. Next up, it's going to create our directory, which is going to be used for our data or collection staging. So all the files that are inside of this OneDrive directory are the files that will be exfilled to our S3 bucket. And then if you see, our OneDrive directory here is inside of our local app data, and it also has an underscore before it. So the point of that is that unless you have your file explorer set to show you hidden files, this will be hidden if you just open it in File Explorer and try to go to it. So a little sneakier if someone's just kind of looking around in File Explorer. Next up, we have some more data staging. So it's almost like a two-pronged data staging approach. So the thread has it built in that anything you have inside of the Scythe upload directory will be copied over to OneDrive, which again is the directory that we're going to use to exfil everything. So let's say that you, prior to running this campaign or prior to getting to your exfil stage, you collected a bunch, you hunted for sensitive data, collected a bunch of sensitive data, you put
Got
it,
some juicy loot.
you got some juicy loot, right? You've got you have the creds, you have the configurations, you got the crypto passwords, you got all that. You put it inside the site upload directory, or you could change it to whatever it is that you want to call it. But everything inside of this directory will be copied over to that hidden OneDrive uh, directory, which will then be exfilled later on. And then up next, we have some ingress tool transfer. So we're going to download the OneDrive sync only.zip, which is our Rclone executable that has been renamed to OneDrive sync.exe. So a little more obfuscation on it. We're not just going to run Rclone. It's going to be under a different name. So if you have some kind of detections that are built off of just seeing rclone.exe executing, this will bypass that. And then next up, if you don't already have data stage that you're going to exfil, or you don't want to exfil any of your actual data, that's fine. We're going to download this sensitive data.zip file, which just has some simulated sensitive data in there, like US customers, UK customers, configuration files, things like that. Just things that should trigger your DLP configurations. It'll have social security numbers. It'll have credit card information, things like that. So these files should trigger on your DLP configurations if you have them employed. And then next up, we're just going to expand that archive. Nothing really crazy there. We're just placing the files in it. And then we're going to unzip or decompress that OneDrive sync.zip, which again is the file, the archive that hosts our renamed rclone.exe. All right, and the next up, this is where it starts getting good. So in here, we're going to use PowerShell to run Rclone and send all of our files up to our S3 bucket. So those variables that we had set earlier on, our access key or secret access key, the bucket name, where it's located, things like that, those are all set here in this configuration. So you see it's pulling the access key ID, there it is, secret key, the region, the storage, and then it's porting it to this rclone.conf. The rclone.conf was also inside of the of that OneDrive sync.zip. I forgot to mention that. So in here, it's just as our parameter set. So it goes ahead and tells it where to send the information to. Then we're going to do some cleanup before we exfil it. We're going to delete the sensitive data.zip as well as the OneDrive sync.zip now that we have expanded that archive out. And then next up, we're just going to send the data away. So here you can see in this long scroll here that we're going to run the OneDrive sync.exe, which is again the Rclone, the renamed Rclone binary, which is going to copy up everything in our OneDrive directory up to our S3 bucket. And then here we can see the proof that it's grabbing everything, it's sending it up. See down here at the bottom that 14 out of 14 files have been transferred. And then again, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So in here, we have our S3 bucket, encrypted society site data. Here's all of our sensitive data that we uploaded. And then if we go back a directory, we see some of those other files that I had staged. So just kind of a quick, easy way to send up or exfil your data out from that local host up to something that is publicly reachable. Essentially, being an S3 bucket should be reachable from pretty much everywhere. And yeah, we've been using this on PTEs to great success. It has been pretty great threat so far.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to see it run and then to see people's eyes kind of light up when they realized data was pulled out and they didn't know anything had happened.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I would want to highlight here about this threat and about all of our threats is they are mostly self-cleaning. So as long as this threat ran through to completion, there was no crazy errors or your EDR didn't nuke it, all of the folders and configuration files and things that we pulled onto your environment at the end are going to be deleted and cleaned up, with the exception of anything you moved into your S3 bucket. So if you transferred some actual data out there, you probably want to go back and make sure you clean all that up.
Which again is why we have that sensitive files zip. So if you don't want to send any of your own data, you don't want to exfil it out to an S3 bucket, you can just use the simulated data and have essentially the same effect, right? And then kind of speaking on how you would hit on what you can see or can't see. So On our Splunk detections here, we have, if you guys have been on any of our Threat Thursday lives, I'm sure you've heard me say this about 100 times, but my favorite detection of the suspicious CMD or PowerShell execution. So this again is just looking for PowerShell or CMD that's running in abnormal directories. And by abnormal directories, I mean not Windows System 32, not program files, and not program files x86. So those are, I don't want to say trusted directories, but those require a lot more tuning to kind of tune out what's known good and known bad. So just like from a higher level, starting with excluding those directories will give you a lot of results kind of right out the gate. But on there, we can see that pretty much everything that happened, right? We could see it copying over. Actually, it might be easier to read from the bottom up. It's not in time order, but here, like you could see us running the PowerShell commands with our AWS configurations in there. You could see it echoing those directories, deleting files, actually running the Rclone executable and sending that data up. So you're able to see like pretty, I don't want to say pretty easily in the logs, but we're not super sneaky in this way. It's running all through the run module, which will log just like your normal process creation. But nothing it's doing here is really, I would say nothing here is really like out of the box malicious or even that abnormal. The only thing we've seen this really getting flagged on is the Rclone executable being renamed. Some EDR solutions will pick up on that, but it's really just kind of like a warning. So because we're not downloading any kind of malicious software or malware or anything like that, even with EDRs on, tuned, no exclusions, this runs, I would say, pretty much without fail.
Mhm.
And then the next detection that we have up is not a signal rule. It's a little more complicated than that. So what I was looking for here is, like I said, inside of some of the EDR solutions, it was being flagged that the Rclone executable was renamed, right? Which is great, but what if your EDR isn't picking up on that, or you're not running an EDR or anything like that? Just with regular logs, how can you see it? So to kind of facilitate that, we're looking inside of our Windows event logs. So this specifically is our sysmon logs, and in here, I'm taking this image field, this image value, and we're going to rex out everything to just pull out the last bit here. I want just the executable name. I don't care what directory it's in or anything like that. I want just the executable name. So we're going to rex out that from the image field, and we're going to create a new field called exe file name. You can call it whatever you want, right? That's going to pull out just that last bit, everything after that last slash. In there, we're going to convert everything in the exe file name field and the original file name field. We're going to make all of those lowercase, because if they are not lowercase, it is case sensitive. So when I first ran this, I had a bunch of false positives because like the P in PowerShell would be capitalized in one and not the other. So you want everything to be the same. So I set them all to lower. And then I just have a where statement in here where if the exe file name and the original file name don't match, I want to know about it. So this is a great way to just kind of quickly show what file name doesn't match the original file name in there. So if something was renamed or it doesn't have an original file name like it has here, that will trigger. So in this, we see the original file name is Rclone. You could also look at like the description or something like that. That'll normally have some more information in there, but I like to see the original file name. So these are different. This is from a previous threat that we have some persistence on that I have not cleaned up yet. That we have this ps exec on there. And then we have that our ttrclone.exe is the name of our campaign executable that doesn't have an original file name because I downloaded it via wget. So that's also kind of abnormal and might take some investigation. And then I will say with this one caveat that we are also excluding commonly trusted quote unquote directories, right? Because a lot of the stuff inside of especially Windows System 32, a lot of that will have the original file name and executable file name are different because it calls a lot of DLLs. So the original file name will call a DLL or vice versa. So it's a little more muddy with that, but with this exclusion in there, you really just kind of clean up what you're looking at and make make it a little higher fidelity that you're seeing something strange. Not that somebody couldn't just copy a file or install something inside of program files, but that should trigger on other things, right? If someone is installing additional software or placing things inside of Windows System 32, there should be something else that triggers you to that, right? But I like this one a lot. I think that it's a really neat kind of detection just to quickly see what is being renamed, what is not originally, consisting of that, or what's been downloaded in an abnormal way, right? And then I didn't include, one second. I did not include the DNS or network information in there like I typically do, because again, AWS and S3 buckets are allowed pretty much everywhere. So like having a detection in place for what is looking out or what is querying AWS or an EC2 instance or that infrastructure is probably not a super great detection, at least not without a bunch of exclusions in it, which are really going to depend on your environment. So that's why we just have the two for today. But definitely, if you get hits on those, that should be something that you should investigate.
Yeah, for sure. So all in all, that was what we had to show you guys today. This one's a little different and pretty interesting. Two last holdouts I would say is there's been a lot of noise lately about Volt Typhoon in the news. So if you have no idea who that is yet, or you're working in the energy sector and you want to brush back up, go check out one of our previous Threat Thursday lives. We built a threat for them a little while back, and we covered that a bit in depth. And we are looking at putting out potentially an update based on some of the new TTPs. So I would say if you're currently a site customer or you follow us, watch out for that. The last thing is April 9th, Unicon is coming back. It will be live streamed all day. It is a virtual conference. You do not have to show up somewhere in person. You can chill at your desk, have your popcorn, your snacky snacks, and watch some cool content and talks from a lot of awesome people, practitioners in the field.
So I just dropped Unicon in there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun last year. Craig was the MC last year, so that put it as even more fun. But it's gonna be a great time. Got a lot of great speakers coming up. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yep. And I think with that puts us under our time window. We're getting better at this.
That's what I'm talking about. There we go. All right. Yeah. Thanks everybody for hopping on. Thanks, Vic. It's always nice to see you, man. Can always count on Vic. But yeah.
Well, appreciate y'all for watching. Till next time.